Oh, building a gaming PC in 2021 is a nightmare. It seems that all of the graphics cards are out of stock, and even if you're after some other components, a lot of them are still very hard to come by, let alone overpriced. So what we're going to do in this video is actually go shopping and find all of the different components that are worth buying. So if you are in the market for a gaming PC right now, I'm going to show you essentially what the good stuff is and sift the bad stuff from the good. I can't think of the phrase, what is it? Separate the wheat from the chaff. I think that's it.
Separate the wheat from the chaff.
I don't understand what it means, but it sounds cool. Like me. Welcome to the workshop then. Here's our 3 builds, looking a little bit bare at the moment, the budget, the bang for buck, and of course max performance. Just to illustrate the problem that we're having at the moment, if we do go to GPU and then NVIDIA for our budget build, and even if we look at something like what, a 1050 Ti, maybe a 1650 Super, anything like that, then you'll see that they don't have any prices listed because all of them are currently out of stock. And unfortunately, this is going to be the case pretty much across all different graphics cards, across all websites. This is obviously the problem that we're having right now. It's not just one particular SKU, it's pretty much everything, which is mind-blowing. So your best bets are to actually sign up for some stock alerts, either with the websites themselves. If you've got Discord, there are some stock alert Discords you can join. Let's have a closer look at what's available on the used market. We'll go for a 1660 Super. Oh my word. Really? So as you can see, that is an absolute disaster area. So for our budget build, we're going to have to do things a little bit differently. We're going to have to play the waiting game. And if you go for an Intel CPU, one of their brand new 11th generation ones, you actually get an integrated GPU that isn't really great for gaming. But if you want to play certain games like Valorant, it can get you by until you actually either have the money to buy a graphics card if you were doing this a little bit more traditionally, or in our case, until you can actually get one at a decent price. So let's adopt this approach for our budget build then. Here we have the 11400 on overclockers. Please don't buy the F version if you are going to do this, because this doesn't actually have discrete graphics, so you would need a graphics card. Here we need this slightly more expensive one, £170. It's a 6-core chip, should perform not quite as well as a 5600X, but should be better than a 3600 from AMD, so price to performance of this thing is actually really good. Of course, we need a motherboard to actually pair it with, so we're going to go for a B560M ATX motherboard, because this should give us maximum price to performance. If you need Wi-Fi, then some of the boards are a little bit more expensive. These are still very new, so you can see a lot of them are pre-order or just aren't even listed. But here, B560 from Gigabyte, £90, pretty much maximum bang for buck. You can definitely see that it is pretty bare bones. You're not going to get any special features here. But you do still have 2 M.2 slots, one of which is actually PCI Gen 4. Case-wise, you've got an absolutely huge selection to pick from. And depending on your budget, you can go for something a little bit more fancy. But again, if you want to save money, there are plenty of M.ATX options out there. You just need something that has decent airflow, and even if it's not going to be super high-end to begin with, you want something that you can upgrade over time, regardless of whether that's a big beefy graphics card or maybe just some RGB fans. You want something that you can be proud of. I'm immediately drawn to this one though, the Colink Citadel Mesh. Now, my last experience with a Colink case wasn't fantastic. It was actually this one that they're advertising there. But the problem was more just the front of it was just blocking all airflow. And clearly, as this is a mesh case, you're not going to have the same problem. I think that it should have everything that you need, really. Just bear in mind that it is obviously quite a small enclosure, so upgradability in the future is going to be slightly limited. But in my opinion, if you're going for M.ATX, you may as well get a smaller case, so you're sort of reaping the benefits of the smaller size. Usually when you're buying a CPU, you'd need to look at an aftermarket cooling solution, so something like an all-in-one or a tower cooler. But in the case of the 11400, it does come with an okay stock cooling solution. It's going to mean that your CPU won't overheat. It's a little bit on the loud side, but if you're struggling to get enough money together for a gaming PC in the first place, then you may as well use the one that comes in the box for free and then just upgrade it later. You will of course need some memory or RAM. This is going to be DDR4 and ideally 16 gigabytes. Something like this is going to be a really nice option. 3200 megahertz of Corsair Vengeance LPX, £90. I've definitely seen it cheaper than this. But you can also get RGB kits that do look a little bit better, but you can see they are slightly more expensive. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I would avoid buying an 8GB kit, just because the max that you could upgrade this to would be 16 gigabytes, whereas if you spend a little bit more and get 16 from the off, you can of course double this up and then get 32. So here we're looking for a 3200 megahertz kit of 16 gigabytes of RAM. Here you go, £92.52. add it to our basket. The penultimate part is your storage, so we're looking at an SSD. It doesn't have to be anything ridiculously quick or high capacity for a budget build. We're looking for something around about the £50 mark. It looks like the best option is actually this WD Black. You can see it's got very good read and write speeds, but it's $62.99. Obviously 500 gigabytes isn't a huge amount, but obviously it is a very easy upgrade to make, especially for gaming. You can add an extra big SATA drive if you want, or even a Gen 4 SSD, put it in that top slot when they're a little bit cheaper. The final component is the power supply, and we're not going to need an absolutely huge one here. Probably around about 600 watts is going to be optimal, really. If you do want to upgrade this to quite a big beefy graphics card, then you'll need to bear this in mind. Don't buy a tiny one if you know you're going to want to get an RTX 3070 at some point. The best value option definitely has to be this one. It's a 700 watt power supply. It's the MWE. Just be aware that it's not going to be the best when it comes to efficiency. It's not going to be the most tidiest thing in the world. That is all of our components, so let's do our sums. 60 plus 170, £530 50 pence. Obviously this does not include a graphics card, so if you're happy to play Valorant forever, then this should be fine, but realistically you're going to have to add what? Potentially £200 to £500 extra on a graphics card at the moment, depending on what you get when you buy it. But I think this should do you pretty well, to be honest. You've got a good looking PC, it's a really nice looking case. I don't know, let me know your thoughts on that down in the comment section below, but let's move on to build 2. And here's a CPU I honestly can't wait to get in house and start testing. Not the i7-11700K, because that is, well, it's come down in price to be honest, but it's still a little bit on the expensive side. I'm a lot more interested in this, the 11700F and the 11700, depending on whether you want to do the iGPU trick. This is an 8-core CPU. It's going to have very similar performance to like a 5800X. Might not be quite as good, but should trade blows, to be honest with you. But the reason that I'm gassed about this thing is because of the value and the price. $299.99 at launch is not bad whatsoever. Yes, it is going to generate a little bit more heat and you can't overclock it, but it's what I would probably buy for myself if I was actually putting a gaming PC together tomorrow, to be honest with you. I'm really pretty intrigued about this chip. Once again, we are going to go for a B560 motherboard, as we don't need Z590, we're not overclocking and the extra features aren't really worth it. I quite like this Steel Legend from ASRock. Just note that it doesn't have Wi-Fi, so you'll need to go for a more expensive motherboard like this B560 Tomahawk from MSI if you do need that. When it comes to cases, there are so many to choose from. There isn't really a right or wrong answer. You need to get something that obviously you like, but also that has decent airflow, especially with these really powerful graphics cards that you can get these days. My two that I would recommend, I guess, for this build is the MSI MagForge 110R, because this is pretty much the price performance case. It does come with some RGB fans as well, so it's a great little starter kit. I think it looks pretty nice. But then I think the most popular case at the moment, and the one that's really easy to recommend, is the 4000D Airflow from Corsair. It's brilliant, very well made. Just be aware that you do need to add your own RGB lighting to it, so it can get quite expensive. And for that reason, we're going to use the Forge 110R, which some of you may disagree with, but it's your PC and your case, so buy whatever you like. For our processor, we will definitely need a proper cooling solution this time around. All-in-ones definitely look the best, but as you can see, they can get quite expensive. The one that I actually would probably recommend to most people though is this, the Cooler Master Master Liquid ML240 V2, because it looks the part. It does perform very well. I've been using this in an ITX case with no problems whatsoever, but fundamentally it's around about £70, so it's almost half the price as some other alternatives, which are probably a little bit better, but this certainly does work a treat. In this build, we're going to step things up to some 3600 MHz RAM, and you can see the very popular Corsair Vengeance kit is £120, but there is also a Kingston option for just under £100 at $99.95. I think that's a very good deal and is probably what I would choose in this circumstance. For storage, you pretty much have two main options. You can either up the capacity but keep the same speed, or you can keep the same capacity but then go for a Gen 4 SSD. And as we're going for B560, that can take advantage of this. While it's not essential for gaming now, it's definitely a solid option, so we're going to do it in this build. You've pretty much got three main options here, one from Corsair, Seagate and Samsung. The Samsung is obviously the fastest, but as it is on sale at £110, it's not really that much more than either of these two, and it's got much better read and write speeds. So I think if you're going to go for Gen 4, why not do it properly? Once again, we're going to need a power supply, but for a build like this, I'd go full modular, something with 750 or 850 watts, to give ourselves plenty of headroom determined to make sure that all of our efficiencies are as high as possible. But this one right at the top, the RM850, is easily what I would go for here. £120. I've actually used this before. You can swap out the cables for something a little bit more attractive if you like. Very reliable, very quiet. Don't really think you need any more than this. Now it's time for the slightly awkward bit when we have to talk about the component that everyone wants, but it seems that very few people can actually buy. The graphics card. In terms of recommendations, I think the easiest GPU from the new batch to actually recommend is the RTX 3060 Ti because it has the best price to performance. The 3060 has more VRAM, but it's slightly slower and the performance is actually quite a big drop off. Whereas the 3070 doesn't actually have that much more performance, yet it obviously costs more money. My personal favourite is the Founders Edition because it has the perfect blend of looks, performance, and it's not silent, but it's actually very quiet. But of course, it's pretty much a case of get whatever you can get hold of at the moment. I've done a few reviews and there have been some like the Zotac cards that are a bit meh in certain places, but performance is still just as good as all of the others, it's just slightly louder. So I think get hold of whatever you can and honestly you'll be very happy with it. Add it all together and you get £895 plus whatever your graphics card is. So really not too bad at all. Obviously you need to add Windows if you're not transferring a license. Even if you can't buy this now, it is going to at least give you something to plan for. Who knows, you could get hold of one, you'd be lucky in a couple of weeks. It might take a couple of months, we don't know. But ultimately if you're looking for price to performance, I think this is a really solid bet. Let's move on to our high performance build though, and as you can see we're going to use a Ryzen CPU. I'm pretty disappointed in overclockers because they do actually have stock, but they seem to be overcharging for both the 5950X and the 5900X. However, they do have the 5800X in stock for a pretty normal price of £400, so we're going to use this 8-core CPU. You've got loads of different motherboards to choose from, there are so many different options. You pretty much want to go for B550 if you're just going to use one Gen 4 SSD, but if you think you're going to go for something high-end like we are here today, then you look at X570. This Strix board is a brilliant option. Just be aware that this F version doesn't have Wi-Fi, so you'd need to look at something else or get an add-in card if you need it. Again, with cases, there is so many brilliant options out there. I really love the P500 though, as the price is pretty decent, it looks fantastic, and because the whole of the front is mesh, you get brilliant airflow, so if you do want to put like a RTX 3080 in here, definitely not going to be a problem. When it comes to CPU coolers, I don't think there's a more attractive option out there than the Kraken Z or Z series. This one is the Z63, it's £220, which is definitely a little bit on the pricier side, but you're very much paying for cooling and almost aesthetics separately here. That's the way I'd describe it anyway, because you've got this very cool screen on the front that you can show live readouts for temperatures, maybe your GPU clock speeds for instance. I was just about to say for memory we're going to go with this, some G-Skill Trident Z, but turns out I've been getting it wrong all of this time. It's not actually Trident Z, it's Tident Z. Well done, eBuyer. Once again, this is a 3600 MHz kit, but this time around we're using 2 sticks of 16 for a total of 32, and you can of course upgrade this to 64 in the future if you're feeling like going particularly large. If you're looking at 1 TB of super fast Gen 4 storage, the best option on overclockers at the moment seems to be this WD Black drive, around about £190, ridiculously fast read and write speeds. It's not necessarily good value, but for a Gen 4 drive it's nice to see that the prices are at least coming down a bit. We're going to up our game a little bit in the power supply department to 1000 watts, just so we can use a 3090 or a 6900 XT if you like. You get all of the parts together, you add them up, and you get £1,529. So we're definitely not in pocket change territory, but I suppose for something super high end, if you have a need for that, then obviously it is once again going to serve you for years to come. When I bought my first gaming PC, honestly, it was a huge investment for me. I was earning around about £400 in my local supermarket a month. I think I spent £700 without a graphics card, and then I got one a month later with my next paycheck. So it was essentially 3 different paychecks, but I didn't regret it for a second. I mean, here I am. I was using my PC pretty much every day for hours on end, and I absolutely loved it. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different story at the moment because actually getting hold of a graphics card for this, at normal pricing, an RTX 3080 would be around about £800, but at the moment you could be paying extortionate prices. So unless you absolutely need a gaming PC right now, I would advise waiting. It is at least almost summer, isn't it, for a lot of us, and we can be outside a bit more. Let me know what you think of these builds though. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Which one is your favourite? Do you agree with my choices? Would you go for slightly different things? Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I honestly hope that it has been useful. If it has, smash that like button, get yourself subscribed for more videos just like this. And if you do want to see some real builds that I put together with my own bare hands, actual hands, not grizzly bear hands, then you can find those in the end screen. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bare hands, that was a terrible joke.